Well, the new Vauxhall driver just couldn't compete today and ends up way back on the grid.
Welcome to episode 22 of the TOCA Championship mode, and Frank Bieler once again qualifies on the front, on the pole, ahead of the two Renaults, and the other Audi qualified 4th for the second race, but that's all okay, because as long as I can manage to finish as high up as 5th in this race, then I will still be leading the championship technically, because I had a 10-point lead going into this, and hopefully I should be able to score some decent points to maintain my points lead. If Menu does win this race, and I have a suspicion that says he will, but anyways. Basically what I'm saying is, I'm under a lot less pressure now than I was about probably an hour ago when I was still struggling with this, but mercifully I did manage to squeeze in a good run, and furthermore, Renault were the victims of circumstances. After a bad start so far, but again, I do think if these AI will make mistakes, and I'm pretty sure they will, that will allow me to slowly but surely tiptoe my way through the order. So, now up into 10th position, ahead of my teammate Derek Warwick. I still need to score some points technically, but if I can finish in basically 6th position or better in this race, then I should still have the points lead heading into Silverstone. And then if I can win the first race, then hopefully that should give me the championship. If I can manage to stay out of the chaos, that is. Because, well, I'm under a lot less pressure now than I was about an hour ago, but I still need to score the points in order to prove I can compete, because competition is important, and I do need to prove that I am capable of scoring points in races as well as winning races, because that's what we call consistency. So, at the moment at least, currently running in 12th, but again, as long as I have got some points on the board, then hopefully I should be able to keep the damage to a minimum, and hopefully whilst I'm at it, and my teammate Derek Warwick is fighting with what appears to be one of the Ford Mondeos, so the chaos is still happening here at Brands Hatch, and going to keep behind the Ford for a moment there and wait for my opportunity to pounce. Derek does also look as though he's trying to be competing for points at the moment, but again, Ford is the only team up to this point who has not scored points. So, even though I did have a bad start, I can at least say there is still plenty of time for me to work my way through the field and potentially score some valuable points by the time we get to the end of this race. So, one of the Ford Mondeos is up ahead of me, and he is actually running in the points for once, which is one thing you don't see very often, and at the moment I can definitely say whatever happened in that first race was crucial. I'm not under as much pressure, but I still need to score the points in order to maintain my championship points lead, because I know if I don't, then it is fair to say Menu could very well have a 5-point advantage going into Silverstone. So I really am going to have to start making my way up the running order if I'm going to be considered if I'm going to be considered a point contender before the day is done. I need to clear this Ford Mondeo if I'm going to be a legit contender. And had to step on the brakes a little bit there, and I just spun out. Okay. Yep, things are not going well at the moment. And I have a Volvo behind me, which makes things a whole lot better. Except for saying it doesn't. And the leaders are now closing in on us, but again, 10th position seems to be the best I can really run at the moment. I can definitely say whatever happened in that first race was... in that first race with the two Renaults, it was absolutely crucial for me to extend my points lead just that little bit, which means if I come out of this with 10th position, then Menu should have a 4-point advantage going into the final 2 rounds at Silverstone, and I might be able to beat that. I do think there is hope of me beating it, but I did need a good run here if I was going to, you know, showcase it. But again, it would also be nice to see if Jason Plato can maybe throw up a challenge to Menu, and then if he does manage to do that, hopefully that will give me the points I need to potentially... Oh, okay. Things are not going well at the moment. Well, I think I can beat Menu with a 4-point... I think I can beat a 4-point deficit. I just need to figure out how to get my shit together in this race first. Because, as I would have expected, things are going horribly at the moment. Although, it is ironic to say that this is probably the only time I've actually seen a Ford Mondeo running in the points pretty much all season long, essentially. And now he's pulling away from me, so... Well, P10, I still get a point. I still get a point at least, but I'm really going to have to get the hammer down if I'm going to start to get more points than I currently have, because I'm currently running in 10th. So, I definitely got lucky with the first race because both Renaults had bad luck, and that was crucial for me to extend my points lead going into this race, because otherwise if I didn't, then I would be in a much more precarious position than I'm currently in. I mean, my position is still scary, but at least I can say it's nowhere near as scary as it could have been had I not finished second in that first race ahead of both the Renault drivers. Or even then, if Menu does manage to beat Plato, then technically he will be going into... If Jason does manage to beat Alan to first position in this race, and I know that's wishful thinking, but if he does manage to do that, that should give me only a 1-point deficit to close up to Menu, but at the moment at least, I'm really going to have to start focusing on making up these positions, because I need to make sure I'm keeping my mistakes to a minimum if I'm really going to be competing for valuable points. Every point counts towards a championship campaign, and 10th is pretty much the lowest I've run in basically all of the races so far, and it looks as though the Mondeo is now pulling away from me, so technically it's going to be difficult to say for sure what may happen, but again, if it's only a 4-point advantage to Menu, and as long as I don't have to start this over again, because I am hopeful in saying that doesn't become the case, but if I don't have to start this over from the beginning again, then hopefully I should be able to close up that 4-point advantage Menu may have coming out of this weekend, and if I can finish high enough in the first race, then hopefully that should give me enough of a cushion to potentially fight for the championship. And the Ford Mondeo at the moment is not looking like he's going to be letting go of 9th position anytime soon. I'm still running in 10th, so the AI must have really hit the zoom button. Doesn't look as though I'm going to be catching them for these next couple of laps, but I really do hope I can at least manage to get some points on the board. And it looks as though I'm closing in on 8th position as well. So it does seem to me that obviously the Ford Mondeo is definitely looking more competitive in this race than he has done basically all season up to this point. And no one is behind us. Doesn't look as though I'm going to try and impede the progress of the Ford that is in the point, whether it be Hoy or Radicic, but coming up to overlapping the other Ford Mondeo, as of which I'm clearly in a faster car compared to the Mondeo, and I would like to at least try and see if I can nip away through the points and get as high as I can by the end of the race, so then I know the damage going into the okay. Let me start over. So then I know the damage going into the final race will be limited, which is what I'm hoping for. I mean, if I'm not able to prevent the damage, then the very least I can do is limit it. And as a result of the Ford Mondeo just spinning out, that now hands me a free position. I'm now up into 9th position and looking to be closing in on one of the Hondas that is just up ahead of me. And looks as though 6 seconds is the current interval to the Honda that is in front of me. And yep, my laptop is still recording this without giving me any issues at the moment or any major glitch effects. And now coming up to overlap one of the Peugeots, as I am now heading through Druid's Corner now on lap 16. I'm only 4 seconds behind the Honda in front of me. I really had to lock the steering wheel on the left hand side if I was going to prevent this car from spinning, which is what I did. And currently 6 seconds behind the Honda in front of me. I do need to at least try and see if I can nip away at the points and see what there is for me to score. And it looks as though he's extending again, but so glad to say I cleared the Mondeo when I did, because if I didn't, then I would have fallen further behind the Honda that's in front of me. I would say my best target for this race is presumably going to be 7th, the way I see it. If all goes well, maybe even 6th, which means that Menu probably is going to take the points lead away from me once again, but at least I can say that 10-point advantage I had going into this race was crucial, because I knew there was going to be chaos. I knew there was practically no avoiding the wrecks once they really started taking place, and as a result, the best position I can really muster at the moment is 9th. I know it's sad, but I'm afraid I can only really focus on limiting the damage now, since I know very well the leaders are already that far ahead of me. So at least I can say my car is in a much better condition than it was at the end of the second race. I mean, I practically held up the field in that first race, and that was the only reason why I was able to come home with second position the way I did. And I can definitely say Biela's DNF in the first race, that too was crucial. Because that really gave me a points advantage I didn't think I was going to have, but somehow I did. But I somehow did. And well, who knows really. I mean, if Menu isn't leading this race, then I'm pretty sure it's got to be at least his teammate Jason Plato who is leading the race, and if it is Plato who is leading this race, then he's really going to save me the effort of being then he really is going to help me out by saving the effort of me. Then he really is going to help me out with the effort of at least trying to beat Menu on a race pace basis if it is Plato who is leading this thing. I highly doubt it is, but if it is Plato who's leading this race, then there will at least be some relief. I knew very well this race was going to be chaotic regardless, in terms of the crashes that were going to emerge, but at least I can say I've not been involved in anything major. I might be slow, but at least I can say my car is still in reasonable condition at the moment, as I've now gone past the 20 lap mark and closing in on one of the Peugeots that is just up ahead of me. It's most likely to be Tim Harvey who is up ahead of me, and 8th position seems to be the best I can really have at the moment, unless I can catch up to Tim in these next couple of laps. I might be able to score 7th if Tim makes a mistake somewhere, which could be crucial for my championship efforts. I do need every point I can salvage if I'm going to be a contender before the day is done. And that looks like my teammate's just up ahead of me, so Derek does let me through on the outside. Thank you. Thank you for letting me through. And I'm slowly closing in on Tim, but unless he has a spin up to this point, I don't think I'm going to catch him, but again, you'll never know if you don't try. You know, all of these cliches I hear very often. And so I'm now only 14 seconds behind Tim Harvey in the leading Peugeot. He seems to be the one who is stalking up all of Peugeot's points at the moment, and 14 seconds appears to be the interval at the moment. I am slowly chipping away at that interval. So unless Tim makes a mistake up to this point, I think 8th might be the best position I can hope for, unless someone spins out right in front of him, and then that will technically be 2 free positions if Tim is blocked, but sadly, for this race at least, it looks like... Oh, okay. It looks as though at the moment, like, 8th position is really the best position I can salvage. So technically what that means is, if Menu does win this race and I finish in 8th, that should technically put me at a... let me think. That should put me at precisely a 2-point deficit. So going into the final race, I will technically be competing with Menu for, I think, a 2-point deficit, because you get 3 points for 8th position. So technically I will have a 2-point deficit I need to overcome coming out of this race if I finish in 8th. It's probably going to be my worst result of the season, but at least I can say this car does have pace, and I am hopeful in saying things will go better at Silverstone than they have done here. But then again, the 10-point advantage I had going into this race, I really needed that if I was still going to be a contender, because... And there's a Peugeot right up ahead of me. Probably Patrick Watts, who I'm now overtaking, because Tim seems to be pulling away at the moment, and it looks like 8th position is really the best one I can manage to luster up. But I really don't care what happens in the closing stages of this race, because as long as I can hold on for 8th position and limit the damage to Menu before going into Silverstone, then that's all I should really be bothered about. So, Tim Harvey is now 17.6 seconds ahead. I've probably got no chance of catching him now unless he has a spin, which could be my get out of jail free card unless someone crashes out in front of him, as of which, oddly enough, that did happen to Bila in the first race here, and that was effectively the reason why he dropped out. But I think that's one of the Renaults who I can see there. It's probably Menu most likely, but again, as long as I can hold on for 8th position, then it should only be a 2-point deficit going into Silverstone. This is the sort of thing I was expecting would happen, but as a result of me having a good first race, I'm really not too bothered, because the points margin is big enough for me to effectively seal the deal on the very next day. And to be completely honest, as long as I hold on for 8th position and don't lose any more points than I am going to lose, then hopefully all should be well. Or, unless if Plato does manage to beat Menu in this race, then technically I should be leading the championship with just 1 point between myself and Menu if Plato is leading this race. I deeply hope he is, but I'm pretty sure he isn't, so the points lead I had going into this race, it's going to quickly evaporate, and it looks like, at the moment at least, and Tim has got past one of the Audis, so I'm going to assume the Audi up ahead must have spun somewhere, and doesn't look as though I'm going to catch him in the next 8 laps, but if he has multiple spins, then he could very well give me 7th position, meaning that the impact will be limited to just 1 point. Every position counts, and obviously every point counts for those point scoring positions you can claim, but doesn't look as though I'm going to be beating him, because I think he's a little bit too far ahead for me to close that interval. But again, as long as everything goes well, then I think 8th position should be the best I can hope for. And I've got a Nissan ahead of me making a little bit of contact there. He throws me on the inside where the curbs are, but Thankfully, that was nothing major. I have a Renault closing in on me, so something tells me I may have to move over for him because I'm clearly a back marker up at this stage of the race. Because at this stage of the race, I'm clearly a back marker. I don't think I can do anything about Menu, so I'm just going to let him go. Not really going to throw a monkey wrench in his plans that much. He clearly has the best car here, he's absolutely dominating this race. 8th position is the best I can hope for, but that's alright because it's only going to be a 2-point disadvantage between Menu and myself by the time this race is done. Also, furthermore, we don't have an overlapping system in this game, which means I do still get to complete the full race distance, and the Audi is now back ahead of the Peugeot, so they must be having a right old scrap for 6th position, it looks like. At least that's according to me anyway. And closing in on Harvey again, but I don't think I've got enough time to overtake him on track, so it would seem as though 8th position is basically the position I'm going to have to deal with. Deal or no deal, 8th position is looking to be the best one I can withstand. So, I do seem to be closing in on Harvey just a bit, but I don't think it's going to be enough for me to throw a monkey wrench into the works unless he spins out in the closing stages, in which case he very well could, because, well, it's a very wet race here at Brands Hatch compared to earlier in the season. So there is still every possibility I could still be in this thing, but I don't think I'm going to find 13 seconds in the final 4 laps to overtaking Tim unless he has a spin right in front of me, in which case if he does, then effectively that is going to give me just a 1-point deficit to Menu. But again, if I have to cope with P8 and a 2-point disadvantage going into Silverstone, then so be it. But the point is, I do know it's now possible for me to win this championship. The second race didn't go anywhere near as well as the first race did because, well, I did get involved in some wrecks, but at least I can say I am clear of the traffic and I am closing in on Tim a bit, but it doesn't look as though it's going to be enough for me to catch him because Patrick Watts, he is in the back marker Peugeot, and 10.5 seconds to Tim unless he's being held up by lapped traffic, in which case he could very well be. If I'm closing up on him by this much, then surely I could still be in with a shot of scoring P7, potentially speaking, but we will have to wait and see to be sure because I only have 2 laps to go. I don't think I'm going to catch up to Tim unless he has a spin. That's my only hope of really scoring 7th. I have managed to keep the mistakes to a minimum, but even then, I knew this was where the AI were going to hit the zoom button. I almost had no hope of beating the top half of the field, but as long as I still get the points at the end of the day to prove my worth, then that's more than enough for me to say I'm still a contender for this goddamn championship. So, closing in on, I think, Calvin Burt, who is in the backmarker Volvo, if I'm not mistaken, because he's just had an awful race. So Tim is going to take P7 in the end, but P8, it will only be a 2-point disadvantage. if everything goes the way I expect it to. Only a 2-point disadvantage to Menu. I might even be able to get my lap back if I'm lucky. Doesn't look as though I'm going to beat the Audi unless he has a major spin, but again, couldn't compete with Menu, also couldn't compete with the AI here, so P8, I will take it or leave it.
A comfortable victory in the end then for Menu, who drove a superb race. So let's have a closer look at the final positions.
Okay, so I wasn't too far behind the Audi of Frank Bieler. Menu did eventually win that race by 5.6 seconds over teammate Jason Plato. Thompson, who was the winner of race 1, finishes in 3rd, Rydell 4th ahead of Bintcliffe. Harvey eventually fought his way up to 6th position with Bintcliffe 7th, I was 8th. Gabriella Tarquini was 9th, and David Leslie, in the first of the two Nissans, finishes 10th. And Derek once again finishing just outside the points. And Paul Radicic, who was running in the points earlier on, fell back to 14th.
Now, after 2 great races, let's see the championship table. The championship is still wide open, so there's all to play for at the next circuit.
Thank you, Tiff. And I do need to make a correction. I was 1 point out on the calculations. It's only 1 point between myself and Menu, or Menu and myself technically, going into the final round of the season in Silverstone, so 2 rounds remaining, but I'm so glad I can finally put the torture chamber that was the curse of Brands Hatch far behind me, because there's no way in hell I'm doing all this shit again. And it also took me 3 days to set a run that was adequate enough for me to eventually have enough of a good run for me to compete for the championship. But anyways, saving the game, because after every 2 races we have to do that. And so let's now move on to the final 2 rounds at Silverstone.